How does this lighting look? I've got half of my face lit and the other half in shadow. I don't think this is usual for like TV, but this is not really TV, so this is part 3 of my bit about connection, which originally was meant to be 2 parts, but then when I got finished with the first 2 parts, after I got back, I realized that there was another part that I left out, which I went over a little bit in the second part, which was connecting with myself. I did talk about that briefly when I mentioned writing. Basically, when I used to write in my notebook, got sinus. Yeah, so I used to write in my notebook and under the influence, and this was a way of connecting with myself, that I would just let things out. It was like turning a faucet almost, and things would come out that I didn't really know were there in most cases. But that's not really the point of this video, is not to talk about like journaling, but it is to talk about what I see as kind of perhaps the most important part of connection. Like, if you want a connection with somebody else, like, how do you go about doing it? Which is what I mentioned in the very first video, that I have no idea how to make connections with other people. And I am not a connection expert, but one of the things that I feel based on my past experiences is that I have to connect with myself. And what does that mean exactly? It's hard to explain. As I said before, that I have been tentatively diagnosed with not dialectical behavior therapy, but with borderline personality disorder. Dialectical behavior therapy is the therapy for borderline personality disorder. But what that basically means, my nose is just dripping. But what that basically implies is a kind of disconnect. When people have borderline personality disorder, they are very dependent on other people for validation, for approval. And the reason for that is that they're not connected with themselves. They have in some way shunned like their emotional self, their emotions, their real self, and so that's kind of where I'm starting from. Yeah, so and if you have not seen the previous videos, this is kind of because my therapist told me that what I need to do is to seek connections with other people, and of course I don't know how to do that. I don't know where to start. I have an idea, but so I mentioned previously the writing, that I used to write in a journal, and I felt like this was me connecting with myself. And a lot of that was drug induced. And I'm not suggesting that if you're disconnected from yourself that you try drugs as a way to reconnect. But in that instance, it wasn't really an instance. It was more like a few months period that worked. But it was more the writing than it was the drugs. The drugs may have helped, but it was more just allowing myself to kind of let things come out that did that. And what happened though was I still wanted connection with somebody else. And so I met a girl who I found really attractive, and I started dating her. And about 2 weeks after I started dating her, something inside me told me that I should not be dating her. And it was just like it wasn't so much, oh, we shouldn't have any kind of relationship, or that I shouldn't be talking to her. It was just more that the whole thing of being a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship was just not right. But I thought that was just fear. I thought that was just me, like my mother abandoned me, basically. She sent me away to live with my dad and pretty much backed her way out of my life. And not totally, but enough that I would say we don't really have a relationship. And I felt like that was kind of, like I need to stick through this is kind of what I was telling myself, and I'm just afraid. I'm afraid that she's going to do what my mother did, kind of thing. And but what happened was I stayed with her for 4 years, and I am at Starbucks, sitting out front side of Starbucks. I came here to get coffee and breakfast, or a latte and breakfast, but I stayed with her for 4 years. When I met her, I thought the way to form a connection with her was the same way that I would write, that I would use drugs, I would drink, and stuff would come out. That I would share myself with her through the drugs, and there were instances where that worked, but for the most part it backfired. For the most part, instead of turning the faucet on, I started turning it off. And it was like I was relying on the drugs too much to do the work for me, and something inside me was like, nope, that's not the way it works. And after about the first month, I would say, when I was writing in my notebooks, I stopped writing, and I would just scribble. What I drew looked like a fur ball that a cat would cough up. There was hardly any words. The only word I remember writing in my journal at that point was stop. That was the only word I wrote, and I drew a stop sign, and I wrote stop in it, and all around it was that scribble, but nothing would come out. Nothing seemed to want to come out. And over 4 years, the relationship with her did not bring me any closer to myself. I did not have a connection with her. I did not feel connected. Even after, say, the three years together, we broke up around 4 years, but after about 3 years together, even holding hands with her was still awkward. It just never felt like she was seeing me. And
that bothers me that she said that.
I felt like I could not show her me because just a few of the things like that. I told her eventually that I was going to have sex with a man, and she was not okay with that. She said that if that would be cheating. I would consider that cheating, and that was kind of why I felt like that wasn't the right relationship for us to have. That we should have just been friends, basically, because that was basically a rejection of the real me. And I felt like if she can't accept the real me, then there's no point in us being together, because I want a relationship with her, but I don't want to be her boyfriend. That's not the relationship that I want. I just want a connection, I don't want But anyways, I just kept getting further and further away from myself until I felt like a total piece of crap. When I was writing in my journal before I met her, and all that stuff that I've mentioned in the previous video, I felt like I was kind of learning how to fly almost. I felt like I was growing my wings, but when I forced myself to stay with her, I cut them back off. And so that's kind of what this video is about, is more connecting with myself, listening to myself, having faith in myself, these sorts of things. Now, there's one line from the Bible that I feel the need to mention, which is when Jesus describes his disciples asked him, what is the greatest commandment that you have? And he says, the greatest commandment that I have is to love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. And the second greatest commandment, he said, is to love your neighbor as yourself. And for me, this is all connection. This is basically everything I've been describing in all three of these videos, is that the first and foremost connection that you have to make if you want connections with other people, in my opinion, like I said, I'm not an expert, is the connection with yourself. that if I had had a greater connection with myself, that relationship with that girl would not have turned out the way it did. Because I would have known that was not the right relationship. Now I know. Now I know that that if I could go back in time, it would have been different. I would have said, "Hey, you and I just need to be friends. If we want to have sex, that's different. That's one thing. But we are not going to be a boyfriend and girlfriend couple." But yeah, so I continued to get further away from myself. I would say when I joined the army because of that relationship. I felt so much like a turd in a toilet that was being flushed down the drain, down the tube, that I felt like I needed the army to kind of whip me back into shape, to give me discipline and structure, and they did that. That worked. But the environment, the hyper-masculine, I would describe the army as being hyper-masculine, and that was part of what made me kind of go in this direction of exploring my gender. But that the 3 years that I was there, I kind of got further away from myself still, because I was desperate for someone to tell me that I was okay. I did not have the amount of orientation to myself that I needed to look at myself and say, "You're okay." I was desperate for for everybody or anybody to just say, "Hey, you're all right." And they actually used that against me. People saw that I was down, and so they kicked me while I was down, and that just perpetuated the whole issue. So I did not really reconnect. I did not really start to reconnect. The first step in me starting to reconnect with myself was to give up looking for connections with other people. And I shouldn't say looking for connections, but I stopped dating. I stopped dating girls. When I got out of the army, I tried dating girls for a while. I dated more girls after I got out of the army in like 2 years than I did in the 26 years before I joined. And but after a while, I realized that this is not working. This is not. I'm not getting any closer to myself. I don't feel any more connected being with these girls. I felt less connected, and so I just I decided to stop and do other things. Things that helped me were things like getting back into drawing, getting back into writing. And I do still write. I write more than I draw now, and I don't do it under the influence, so it's not quite as. I don't feel quite as exalted as I did when I used to write under the influence, but I do still get something out of it. I do still have experiences where stuff comes out that I did not know was there, and but then the major point of reconnection was the gender exploration, putting on the wig and makeup, and seeing myself as a woman for the first time. That was the major turning point in me reconnecting with myself, and that not only did I start to feel more reconnected with myself, but I started when I saw myself that way. What I thought was, now I can connect with other people. Now, and I'm not saying that I really can. I think it would be a struggle still, but I felt like it was possible. Like, it may not be possible right this minute, but possibly in 5 years of me accepting myself and going through this, not just the physical transition, but also the mental transition of just adjusting my self-image. I felt like that a connection is possible. So is there anything else I want to say? One of the things that does help as far as connection goes, like I said, journaling certainly helped, but for me it wasn't really journaling. It was more just saying whatever I wanted to say, which I guess is what journaling is, but sometimes it would be poems, sometimes it would be just a single sentence about another person, or just me playing with words. It wasn't really journaling per se, I guess, unless that's what you consider journaling to be. It's just writing whatever you feel like. So that's helped. Spiritual paths, arts, these sorts of things are, for me, are kind of all inclined towards connection. To me, art is kind of about connection. Sigmund Freud said that basically the arts are a sublimation of the desire for sex, that people, out of a kind of sexual frustration, create the great works of civilization. And I kind of agree with that, but I would say that it's more appropriate to say the desire for connection. That sex, because sex without connection, you can have sex without connection, and that's not that great. I've had that, and it's not even worth having. But anyways, I feel like I'm getting a little bit past the point. I feel like I've kind of made my point, so.